Hello, Internet land. Well, I'm here today in Southampton, in England, UK, and I'm here to introduce you to the world of Ernie Sears. He's an absolutely fantastic 82-year-old, and he's been studying the world of ufology and the paranormal since the 1960s. And first of all, we'll just pan around his room here and show you the sort of things that he's interested in. He's the public relations officer of the Southampton UFO and Paranormal Group, and he's been with them for many years now. And many of these his pictures and articles have been printed in newspapers, magazines. He's been interviewed on the BBC, the Sky Television. Very, very active in the field. He's written letters to very important, famous people and worked with somebody in the House of Lords. I'll tell you about that later on. And he's wanting to share his story with you today, because it's something that we should all know about. And as you're looking at these articles, you can see a lot of items here from newspapers in the UK. I know a lot of American newspapers never cover this sort of thing, but there's quite a lot of interest over here. Some of the newspapers are friendly to us, some of them pretty aggressive. But nonetheless, they do cover the stories. So the cover-ups here are perhaps a little more covert than in America, but nonetheless they are. So people like Ernie and his group are really bringing this stuff out into the open now. And they are things we have to be aware of, because these sightings are going on globally, daily, being totally ignored by the majority of the media. And people are just walking about with their heads on the ground. They're just not looking to see this stuff, are they? But we really should be more aware of what's going on out there in space, because how can we be the only people in this universe? Going to show us today a lot of photographs he's taken recently of sightings, very unusual pictures taken over Southampton and Portsmouth, and he's going to tell us about the changes in his life from being a contactee and the healing that he gained from it, which of course in its turn has changed a lot of other people's lives as he's met with them along his way. It's a very, very fascinating story. And as I said before, he's been in this field since the 1960s. So he's very, very well versed, very, very well studied, very well read on these sort of things. So it's going to be a very interesting film for you. These are some of the most recent sightings that he's had. There's about 200 in all. I must tell you, we're actually in Southampton, in Hampshire, England, and Southampton famous for, you see, the QE2 was birthed here. Used to be a very, very big port, very, very near to Portsmouth, and Portsmouth is famous for the HMS Victory, the old Admiralty ships in the old days, and obviously of interest to the world, because here we are. You can see these photographs. We do have a lot more to show you. So we'll go over to Ernie now, and he can tell us in his own words how he came to get these photographs and what he thinks they're all about. Thank you, Ernie.
Right. Yes. I think I ought to go back to 1960 when I had my first sighting of what we call a UFO. A glowing object in the sky in March 1960 over Portstein Hill, which not really oddly enough is where we are now with these other photographs, mostly over Portstein Hill. And caught this glowing object in the sky on a March morning, very windy. Didn't know what it was. I knew about what we call flying saucers in 1960, but had a very open mind about them in those days. And I was an insurance agent on my round, and I looked at this thing and I thought, it's got to be an airplane. There was a very strong wind blowing, and I thought, well, it's an airplane struggling against the wind, you know. And the young man passed me on a bicycle on this footbridge I was on, crossing a railway line. And I just said to him, do you think that's an aircraft up there? And he looked at it and he said, yeah, it's an aircraft. So I said, okay, that was fine by me. I didn't want it to be a flying saucer in those days or whatever. I went on to my round where the other customers lived, and standing at the door talking to one of the customers, I heard the roar of jet engines. And I recognised what they were because I'd been in the Air Force during the war and I was still sort of interested in the airplanes. I ran to an open space where I could see this object still in the sky, half an hour from when I first saw it, in the same spot, and 2 meteor jets climbing up towards them. As they drew near, it kind of turned on end and went out just like a light bulb being switched off in a clear blue sky. And I ran into a phone box and I found the phone number of Thorney Island Airdrome, where these aircraft came from rather, and just asked the chap in the control tower what was the objects these 2 meteor jets were chasing. I never forgot his answer. It changed my whole life. He said, you didn't see any object, you didn't see any meteor jets. I said, hey, come on, I've been in the Air Force 5 years. I said, I know what a meteor jet looks like and sounds like. He said, I'll repeat, you saw no meteor jets, no object. So I said, okay, put the phone down, walked away with my mind in a twirl, I can tell you. I didn't quite know what to think about this. It bothered me all day. It was around the era of the Cold War between Russia and USA and whatever. I thought it might be a secret Russian plane surveying our airfields and the particular place on top of Portsdown Hill, which are highly sensitive Admiralty complex in those days. And I thought more and more about it, and I thought, well, if it was a Russian aircraft, secret aircraft, behaving like this, hovering in the sky, vanishing totally, we don't stand a chance. So I thought more about it, and I thought, no, I don't believe it was anything to do with the Cold War. It kind of went on from there. The odd thing is, this is an odd thing, but if you're into the paranormal like I am, you'll know there are no coincidences. They're all contrived. The next day, my brother-in-law came over to tea, which he did occasion. Now, he worked in this secret complex on top of Portsdown Hill. He was an electrical draftsman. And he walked in, and while my then wife was making a cup of tea in the kitchen for him, I indulged in conversation. I thought would be of interest. Just ahead of him, I said to him, you had an exciting morning over your place yesterday morning, didn't you? And he looked at me, and his face went grey, and then it went white. And his mouth set in a very grim line. He couldn't speak. He was absolutely stunned. And I said, oh, all right, Doug. I said, don't worry about it. Forget I said it. Because I realised he had a very painful peptic ulcer at the time. And I suspect my comments, set it off, maybe. But anyway, there it left me wondering what this thing was, setting it on the very long path to the current day where I know what they are. I've had the sightings, I've had the abductions, I've got the photographs, and here I am being interviewed, and I want to tell you all the truth, the absolute truth as I see it.
I believe you've been in contact with the occupants of these craft that we call aliens. Can you tell us about that? So you've been a contactee?
Yes, I'll do my best. Well, my search started in 1960 to find out what these things really were. I had various experiences of other things in the sky, got on the local television through it, but the years went by and none of us were solving the problem. It was in all the papers, big headlines, over here, over the USA, over the world. No one seemed to be getting anywhere. And for quite some time, maybe 5 years or so, I was so disillusioned I couldn't get any answers. I gave up for about 5 years, actually. But I was drawn back into it when I worked for a carpet factory in Southampton. And one of the ladies in the tea rooms where we had our canteen was reading a book, and I could see it was called UFOs Over Russia, or something like that. I just said to her, those things still abate? Oh yes, he said, you want to borrow this book? So I said, I wouldn't mind. So she lent me the book, and I was hooked again. And one of the first things it led to, in 1977, I was married. I got remarried again in the years gone by. And I went out in the back garden in Southampton, where I lived then, to put one of our cats out. We had 5 abandoned cats. My then wife was a cat fanatic. As the cat was going about its business, and it would have been about 7 o'clock in November in 1977, I just looked around the clear sky, and there was this huge triangle hanging over the top, just hanging there in the sky. I had time to see that it had ribs on the underneath. It was totally silent, and funny little lights round the edges. I turned my head, called to my wife, come out, see this thing. As I turned back and looked up, it had gone, totally gone. I didn't quite know what to do, but I remembered the one that disappeared in 1960. This time I was able to telephone the police, the local paper, etc., the local airport. No one had seen anything. There was nothing up. Right. On the Monday, well, this was a Friday, on the Saturday, there was what they call the alien broadcast on Southern television. It was quite famous at the time. It was in all the papers. This voice, purporting to be the voice of some kind of outer space being, came on over the message that was going out on the TV, telling us that we had to behave ourselves, we had to take care of our world, otherwise some, nasty things might well happen. It was in all the papers, actually, on the Monday. And on the Monday, I thought I'd look further about this, and I phoned up the Royal Observatory down in Sussex, Hurstman's Hoe, I think it's called, and they laughed at me. They said, no, there were no alien aircraft in the sky on Friday night. So I said, okay. Got me really even more interested. I joined the local UFO group, became their representative, British Flying Saucer Bureau. Used to travel all over the south on my trusty push bike. I was also a racing cyclist then, by the way, and interviewing people alleged to have seen craft or whatever, most of which, I'm afraid, were misapprehensions at the time. But I got into 1978 and January, and on this particular night, it was quite dark outside, and our lounge window looked out towards where the Isle of Wight is. If you look at it, opposite Southampton, the Isle of Wight, 4 miles across the water. We saw this light approaching from the Isle of Wight, very low down, very strange, because it was quite a big light, really big. It was proceeding very, very slowly. It kind of crept towards us. We dashed out in the garden to have a look at it. We didn't know what it was. And as we stood there, this massive object, sort of semi-oval, although it was a black sky and this was very bright, you could not really see all the details, had a very bright cabin in front, appeared to be, all little coloured lights round the edges, all different colours, not like our colours. The reds weren't red, the greens weren't green, whatever. It crept along, and had it been an aircraft, it would have fallen out of the sky, totally. Crept along until it was right over the top, and there was my wife saying, what is it? And I was saying, I don't know at all. And then it sort of crept over and disappeared. Quite stunned by that, and I went indoors and I phoned round all the places I should have phoned. Everyone said, no, we had nothing up. We haven't had any reports. Okay. The next night was just an ordinary night, but the second night, at the same time, in the same place, there was this big object coming up from the Isle of Wight. A great big light, really huge. Again, we went out in the garden, dashed out there, and again, this object came right over the top of us, almost stopping, and then crept away and disappeared over the rooftops. No sound, no nothing. This was even more weird, and I couldn't find anybody who actually seen it. But on the third night, which again was the night after that one, there was this light again, and by then I got hold of some binoculars and a camera. I said, come on, we're going to get a picture of this thing. And we dashed out in the back garden. It gradually crept over till it was right over the top. And I took a picture of it, which never really came out, although I submitted it afterwards to the local students' observatory place there in the university, and they printed it for me, gave me a print, and there was a sort of a smudge on it, but you couldn't expect much more because there was a black sky and there was a black object. I looked at it through my binoculars. Again, you could hardly distinguish what it was, but it was still up there. It just stood there, totally silent. And then all of a sudden, something I found quite humorous at the time, I don't know why, I thought a white ray flashed down from it and it's gone. And I thought, that's a silly thing to think about, you know. The next minute, I'm up in what we would call the universe. I was going by Mars, beautiful colour, going by Saturn with lovely coloured rings, Jupiter with all this little moons around it. I seemed to be going by them, you know. I don't know where I was, there was nothing around me. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what time passed. You don't know on these things. It could be hours compressed in a second. But it seemed as though it was seconds. And stood there on the ground. Wasn't really conscious of my wife at the time, which is another strange thing. And I thought, that was silly, you can't do those sort of things. But why is it I feel different? And there I was, standing on the ground in my garden, feeling very strange. I felt a different person. I had this very weird feeling that the stones under my feet I was standing on were alive with energy. The flowers I could see, they were alive, and I was all part of them. The entire world was part of me. I'd been up there, and somehow or another I came back with this bit of knowledge I'd never had, and I was in my 50s then, that we were all one. We were all, and that has stayed with me all these many years, no matter what I've got into. So there I was. Once again, this thing, there were memories that were lost, actually. It took me many years, in fact, to about 4 years ago, before I spoke to my then wife. She was my ex-wife then, 4 years ago. We got divorced quite some time ago. And I was just talking to her casually with her mother. I kept in touch with them, and she said to me, where have you got with your book you're writing? I said, well, it's at 400 pages now. At that time when you and I were out in the garden, and this is the odd thing, I never really thought of her being there. It happened to me. She didn't come into it. And she said, I don't want to talk about that, Ernie. And I realised then that she, of course, had come with me, because forever after that period, she used to complain about nightmares, which she still gets to this day, apparently. She's in a huge place with hundreds of different people there, and she doesn't know any of them. They're all strangers. And it was quite some years after that occasion when I got hold of books where it recited that very thing, where people were queuing up in caverns, hundreds, going onto these tables and whatever. So I tried to persuade her to tell me about it, talk about it, get it out of your system, because I was never harmed by my abductions, but she had nightmares. Anyway, that was that. It didn't work. She wouldn't talk about it. She doesn't want me writing in the papers or whatever. She gets a bit worked up about it. I try not to expose her to that thing, because she's definitely still having these nightmares. But life had to go on. 1978, I'd had these experiences, and one abduction, which what I realised it was after quite some time. In that same year, I began to have strange dreams. Sleeping alongside my wife, the first one that I remember was I was in a church, like you were in the nave, and looking down into the church where there were two men standing. They appeared to be men, I can never quite remember that. They were holding a big ball of light between them, blue and gold, and out of it were coming all these blue and gold rays, and I was sitting up in bed and they were going through me, and I sort of pinched myself, thought, am I awake? I was awake. Am I dying? No, I'm not dying. this is really nice, you know. And then it all vanished. And the next morning rather, I said to my wife, I had a very weird dream last night. She said, what was it? And I told her, and oh yeah, that was funny, she said. I said, yeah. And then I had a second dream in the same year, just a few months later. That one was, I was sat up in bed again, looking towards a wardrobe across the room, and there was a face looking out from behind the wardrobe at me. And then it turned into just a face, and it came towards me and stood right in front of my nose. And I laughed. I remember laughing to myself. This is stupid, isn't it? Are you supposed to be looking at me, or am I looking at you? It stood looking into my eyes. Then all of a sudden I went, shh, and it was gone again. And that was the second one. And I just put them down to dreams. I hadn't read any books much then on UFOs and abductees. But years later, those experiences relived in my mind because these other people had had the same things. Even one by Betty Failer in the USA, not Betty Failer, Betty Anderson in the USA. I read Raymond Failer's trilogy of books about Betty Anderson, and her first experience was like that. The one where she went on a journey to some strange city, all crystal and that. She finished up in front of a huge bird, a massive bird, and the heat from it was so fierce, she cried out for, she was quite religious, cried out for her gods, you know. She thought it was her God showing her his son, to quote her words if I remember, because from this great big bird were coming all these blue and gold rays going through her. And I sort of sat up when I read that. I thought, wow, you know. And these things went on like that. There were things that I'd gone through in the ensuing years that I later read about. Even Whitley Strieber, there were things in his book. I looked at them and I thought, gosh, I had that before he did. And during that ensuing years, another strange thing happened after these 1978 occurrences. I had the gift of healing dropped into my lap. Fortunately, I was with somebody who was a healer at the time, because I'd taken a friend of mine to a healer. He was dying of cancer, and he rang me up and said, could you drive me over to so-and-so in Southampton? I'm having healing. I said, what are you having healing for? I've seen the doctors and I've got terminal cancer. No, go on, I said. He was a quite famous comedian, actually, Derek Roy, and he was on, not TV, but radio in those days. He said, yes. He said, the doctor has told me, eat, drink, and be merry. Really. He said, so I'm going to this healing lady to see if she can help. So I drove him over there. This is quite a long story. We got to this lovely little cottage in Southampton. This very nice lady opened the door. Oh, hello, she said, and my friend said, this is Ernie, you know, whatever. She said, are you a healer? I said, no, don't know anything about it. Would you like to come in, she said, and, you know, see what goes on? Yeah, I don't mind, I said. I was quite interested, having seen UFOs. Seemed to be the natural thing to explore a bit. At the back of my mind, I thought I was always going to find an answer to these UFOs, you see. So I went in and sat in this nice little cottage lounge, and she said, would you like to join in the healing? I said, what do I do? Well, first of all, she said, I'll take this cross off your friend's neck, at a gold cross. As some of you might realise that when you're dying, you turn to anything, and even if you're not religious, you go and buy a cross or something. And it's in a little box in cotton wool. I'm just going to put this cross on the mantelpiece, she said, and bless it. So, okay, I watched her put it on the mantelpiece, and she dropped the cross in the box, which was open, you know. Came back, and we held hands. All right, yeah, that's what reminded me of. Yeah. Sorry about this. I don't always happen like that. She came back to where we were sitting, 1, 2, 3. We held hands. I got this vibration, just like that, only more so. And then it all disappeared when I sat up. "You all right?" she said. And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." "You sure you're not a healer?" I said, "No, I don't know anything about it." "No, all right," she said. She went across to the mantelpiece, picked up this box and said, "Look." And I looked, and the cross had gone through the box. It was laying on the mantelpiece, and the box was still on top of it. And I thought, wow, it's really something. And I learned quite a lot there in the weeks I went there. We didn't save my friend. He passed away in about 6 months' time of the cancer. But I was a healer, I've been told that. So I said to this lady, on the last occasion I went there with Derek. I'm just scratching my brains on this one. Yeah, I was sat in the chair just the same, no different. Off they all went. They just said, "Okay, shut your eyes and just, let yourself go." And all of a sudden this hand went absolutely... They're going to give you a demonstration. Up in the ceiling were all these faces looking down at me. They were all the same. They were quite strange, and they were dressed in white cloaks, and they were talking to me. I couldn't speak because I didn't quite know what they were saying. They were talking in some strange language. I didn't like this business of my hand. I didn't like it being controlled. It was going all over the place. So I sat up in this chair. I made myself sit up. I sat right up. And this lady, her name was Phyllis, said, "My goodness, you were away there, weren't you?" So I said, "I didn't like that." "Are you thirsty?" I said, "Yeah, I'm absolutely dry." And she brought a jug of water in that particular time. I drank the whole jug. She said, "You're going to be one of us." I said, "Oh, I don't know about that." There was all these people talking to me. I didn't know who they were. They were talking in something I thought was French. So Derek said, "That will be my father, I expect." He spoke French. He was always trying to teach me French. I said they were saying something like, "Courage, mon enfant," and that was courage, my son, apparently. I learnt that afterwards. I didn't know at the time. So this lady said, you are definitely going to be a healer, or you can be a medium." I said, "What does that do?" She said, "We talk to people from the other side." "Oh no, I don't want to do that." I said, "If I'd do anything, I would like to be a healer because I can help people." "Right," she said, "we'll try that." So I said, "What do I do now then?" "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Do I advertise? I'm a healer. Come and queue up, whatever, all that kind of thing." No, she said, "They will find you." "Really?" I said, "Okay. I don't want to put little cards in windows then, because I was feeling great. I'm going to empty the hospitals, All the doctors and nurses are going to sit around smoking and drinking. They won't have any work to do." Oh, it's a big head I was. But it made you feel like that. Because I hadn't asked for it, it just happened. So anyway, okay, so off I went. In my friend's, I was a driver, wasn't I? Yeah. I went off with him and said, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah. Except this hand of mine keeps going, whatever." And I was going on to 2 friends of mine after that, somewhere else, I drove over there and I walked in, and they were both UFO believers, whatever. I'd formed a little 2-women, 1-man group, "Are you all right?" They said. I said, "Yeah, well, you look ever so strange." I said, "What do you mean?" "You're not Ernie anymore." I said, "Them is daft, So I told them what had happened. They were quite gobsmacked about it, Anyway, this thing went on all the time I was there. And in the end, what did I do? Something said, "Drink another glass of water. And just ask them to stop, because you're not ready for it." So I said, "Really, is that what I do?" He said, "Yeah." And I sat there drinking a glass of water and then just said, "Please stop, I'm not ready for this." And this all went, stopped. So I went home. The first thing I did when I walked in, I said, "I've got myself involved in the ceiling My wife said, I knew you would, she said. I knew you would. Will we be rich? I said, well, I don't know about that. I said, it's not about being rich. It's not about money. Really? I always thought healers did this for money, whatever. I said, no, you don't do it for money. If people want to give you money, you're allowed to take it, without being too greedy. But I said, we're not going to be rich. If you're any good, she said, I always remember this, they would be queuing up outside your door from all over the world, and we will be rich. I said, okay. Well, it never happened that way. So, in fact, it led to my divorce after a few years. I'd been married 10 years again that time, and she was a very jealous lady, I'm sorry to say. I mustn't go on too much about it. Extremely jealous. Going off to meetings with other ladies and men. We used to sit around tables and things like that. I used to do that. Going healing, she used to think the ladies would all take their clothes off and I would heal them in the nude. Especially when she saw that in the Sunday. She saw that in the Sunday paper once. A lady, the Sunday, I think it was the Sunday Mirror. One of those papers, There was a nude lady standing in front of the desk, and there was a healer there with his hand there. I knew it, she said. So don't be so silly. But it did lead to some nasty things happening, and we got divorced after. Right, so there was this healing I was involved in out of nowhere. Quite amazing and very, very uplifting when you found you could put your hands on people and often, not always, solve really serious problems. And so it went on that I went to a lecture that I was holding, believe it or not, in my lovely National Federation of Spiritual Healers white coat, and I went to a back pain clinic run by the local hospital. They asked me to come along and give a talk on healing. So I did. I turned up. And first time I'd done a lecture, that was, in actual fact. There was this room full of people, some in white coats from the hospital, others ordinarily, And I just talked about how I'd become a healer. And obviously I said, we'll give you a demonstration just to show you what happens from a healer's point of view. So I called out for volunteers from the audience who obviously, in the back pain clinic, had back pain. They were sufferers. So one lady came out. She'd been suffering from chronic back pain for 35 years. She went to a consultant every so often. She'd had enemas, she'd had all sorts of things. Nothing had solved it. So I just said, okay. Now normally I would sit a patient down in a chair. That was the routine I used. Because when you're a healer, you get round to the engine works around the forehead with one hand, and you put the other hand on wherever you think you should do. This time I said, you stand there, just stand up. All right, she said. So I just put my finger on her back. I said, now, all you got to do is bend over and touch your toes. And she looked up at me and says, I can't do that. I said, why not? It'll hurt. No, it won't, I said. And if it does, you can get up again. Just my finger, like that. Go on, where you go? I said, just stop when it hurts. Then she went, stopped halfway, looked up at me. What are you doing? I said, carry on. Bend down and touch your toes. Get hold of your ankles. Oh, I don't know about that. I said, go on, all the way, slow. Right down. Right down she went, grabbed hold of her ankles, looked up at me. She said, what have you done? I said, well, when healing works, it works. When it don't work, it don't work. So don't ask me. Oh, she said. I said, now stand up. She said, okay. I bent her backwards, I bent her forwards. That hurt? No, she said. Doesn't hurt at all. She went back to her seat. And that particular week, she was due to go and see her consultant. And when she got there, and he gave her the usual whatever he does do, he said, what have you been doing? She said, why? What have I been doing? You haven't got a twinge of pain, he said. Everything's all right in your back. I don't want to see you anymore. What have you been doing? Oh, she said, I forget what she said, actually. She said something inconsequential anyway. Didn't mention me at all. I said, when she told me that week later on, her husband told me actually, oh gosh, I wish she'd have mentioned got healing, because that was a bit like UFOs. You know the truth, you talk about it to people, it's got its connections there. But that was back in 1982. She lives in Woolston. We swapped Christmas cards. Never a twinge. Only once, and she was going to fly to Guernsey about 4 years ago, and she'd got this back pain come on again. She sent a taxi for me to Worcester and said, can you come here? I said, yeah, I wasn't sure about this. I said, yeah, all right, I'll come out and see you. But I laid her flat on the floor, and I sort of stood by the side of her and did her back from there. She got on the plane next day, went on a holiday, rang me up. Never heard from her since. Must be 4 years ago. Now, I got another lady. I must tell her this one. Sorry about it, but I go dancing quite a lot. Not quite so much years ago, but now I do a lot of dancing, you know, to rock and roll, country and western, big band, swing, jazz, you name it. If there's a dance going on, I dance. I'm only 82 anyway, so that's not too bad. I went to this club in Portsmouth on this particular occasion, and the first thing that happened was rather strange. I walked in the door, and the guy that runs the club, who I'm still in touch with to this day, he says, where have you been all this time? I said, what do you mean? You haven't been for 10 years. I said, you're joking. I said, I'm sure I've been coming here more often than that, but when I worked at 8, no, I hadn't. I'd been through a divorce and whatever and things. So nice to see you again. I said, oh yeah, nice for you. There was not much room there. I sat down at the table. There was a lady and a gentleman sitting on the other side. I just spoke to them, you know, like you do. Got a drink. Didn't have anybody to dance with. So in the end, I said to the gentleman, I assume was the lady's husband, is it okay if I ask your wife just for a little dance? Well, you can ask her, he said. I don't think she'll be able to dance. I said, oh dear. So I said, why is that? She said, I've got chronic back trouble. She said, I've had it for 35 years. Really? I said, my mind went into overdrive. So I said, what have you had for it? Oh, I have this and I have that, and I go back every so often. My doctor said, I'm afraid it's incurable. You'll never get rid of it. So, okay. So I pushed a card over to her, one of my cards, you know. She read it. Oh, I don't know about that, she said. I don't think I believe in that sort of thing. Well, why don't you have a little try, I said, you know, just to see, it might not work. No, I don't know about it. I said, okay. What would you do then? She said, well, we'll just go out and have a little dance, slow dance on the floor. You won't hurt me, will you? I said, no. I'll just put my hands on your back. So eventually, it took a long time, she got out on the floor, and there was a slow one, and it was, oh God. It was so apt at the time. There was a country and western number that was Going the Rains in. I can't for the life of me think of the title, but it fitted what I was doing and what was a problem in a way. We'll come to it in a minute. Hurry up there. Give me a hand. So I got her out on the floor and we danced around the music, and one hand on her back, which was going like, they're really doing well today there. Going mad on her back. Oh, that feels nice, she said. I said, yeah, it's supposed to be nice. We danced around, the music stopped. So I said, okay, took her off the floor. Hey, what's that? She said, felt lovely. I said, well, that's good sign, you know. So I had a couple more dances with her, and about the third or fourth one, well, there's a rock and roll number going on. And believe me, I was giving her hell, I was. Backwards, forwards, right and round. She came off the floor. She said, what have you done? Well, I've cured you. She said, I'm totally free of pain. You've changed my life. I said, really? Will it last? Now I said, I'm not allowed to tell you that under the rules of the heating I was under, you know. I said, I would like to think it would, but we'll have to wait and see. But if you get any more trouble, just give me a ring, because she lived down in Sussex and I lived here, you know. And she just walked off the floor with her husband. So I never saw her for about maybe 3 months. And I happened to go back to the club again. There they were sitting at the table. Just came rushing over me and put her arms around my neck and kissed me. She said, you have changed my life. I said, why didn't you ring me then? I've been ringing you, she said. Are you on a... What? I've got your phone number. I said, yeah, but it's a call box one. I never had my own phone. Then it was in the flats just down the road there. She said, you just seemed to be 8 when I rang you. I said, well, I don't know quite why that was. Anyway, you all right? I am all right, she said. I'm going to dance with you all evening. I said, all right. I said, yeah. And to this day, you know, I get cards because there was a rather humorous but very happy sequel to it. I used to see her dancing around the clubs I went to. I did see her husband after a while. I saw her dancing with a young fella. And they seemed to be quite what I would call close, you know. So they were. All of a sudden, she was divorced. I got an invitation to the wedding to this young guy. And I joked about it. I said, I can tell your back's cure. You're getting married with a 20-year-old and you're a 40-something. You know? And to this day, she is absolutely fine. They built their own cottage up in the north of the country, built it, the two of them.
Wow.
And I just not had a card, actually. Everybody well up here, she said. Hope you're okay, you know. I sent her a couple of pictures of the UFOs and what I was into. But yeah, and that was in the 70s. No, sorry, that was in the... I don't know. Must have been the 80s, yeah. Whatever it was a long time ago. And that was my really one that sticks in my mind all the time on the dance floor.
So it just shows that being a contactee, they gave you that gift and it changed not just your life, but everybody else's. Something you got in contact with. It's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got used to it. I treat this quite naturally. Yeah. I only heal now when the occurrence happens. Yeah. I'm put in contact with somebody. I don't go looking for it. Yeah. I used to have a clinic at one time years ago where I had healers working for me, whatever, but that was a long time ago. And nowadays it's just as and when.
When we were chatting earlier, you were saying how you think they gave you that gift. Okay. Ernest, we were chatting earlier about the gift you were given from the as a contactee from the aliens, the gift of healing, besides other things. And you were saying how it somehow tweaked the DNA. So do you think this healing gift is sort of God-given or alien-given? How would you explain it? And it seems that it's not only changed your life, but it's changed the life of other people that you've come in contact with.
Oh, that's true.
You know, we'd love to hear about this. Do tell our internet world about it.
Well, as I say, it's partly God-given, or it was partly, as far as I was concerned, but then I'll get into the area of what's in the ether, what's in all around us, what is there. And scientists have said now this kind of energy exists in all the universe. It's universal, and it's what's developed into what we call quantum physics, for want of a better word. Well, you might say it's some magic mathematics, but affecting the brain or the DNA or whatever. So these days I do have like a crucifix in the bedroom, and I've got angels up there, which is another story, and I've got a picture of an Indian guru up there, and that kind of thing. They were my artifacts from the earlier days. I haven't thrown them away because I feel they're necessary, but it's now not God. They're going to do it again, so you have to watch this.
Smiling. Can I have it? I'm going to grab all the healing I can while we're here.
Yeah. Well, we don't necessarily
very warm on my face.
Link ourselves with God, because God is everywhere, and as far as I'm concerned, He's responsible, or it is responsible for everything. And if people call it religion, all well and good, as long as they obey the better things in religion, all well and good. That's the way it's meant to be. That's the way it's meant for a healer to spread that knowledge among others, so they too in turn can become loving and caring people with their fellow men and women and to all life on this planet. So their minds are opened, you see. Every time you have an abduction, I'm speaking personally, you come back with knowledge in your mind that you don't know what it is. There's no answer to it. You know you've learnt something while you've been away. And then comes a time in life when this knowledge gets put into good use. Happens all the time. And this is what's happening now with me and others, where we've got these craft with occupants, obviously. They must have occupants, their craft, appearing. No one else sees them. And why don't they? Because they're not ready to assimilate that. If you imagine 200 of these objects over Portsdown Harbour suddenly appearing to hundreds of people, there will be panic, and people will be killed in the rush. Some will probably have mental instability thrust upon them. That's not on. So they're biding their time. But what we've got to do is raise our knowledge, raise our intuition, raise our, if you want to use the word, religious ability, and we too can experience these things. And I don't really think until then that these aliens or humanoids or whatever they are, they're going to actually make any drastic action. We have got to meet them halfway. And as you know, I don't have to tell you this, all of you, the world is in a terrible state, the worst it's ever been in. And this country's in a terrible state, and the worst for my 82 years. And I sometimes despair. And then things like this happen. All these pictures that George has taken of strange objects and humanoids. Me sitting here and giving you healing on your hand, because hopefully it's energizing the DNA in your mind and wherever, and you're becoming more aware. I mean, you are aware already, because I've seen some of the stuff you get on film, the orbs and the energy and all that kind of thing. But this is a little bit different. This is hopefully going to raise your awareness just that much more. It will be useful to you, because that's what it's intended to be. You're like George, you see. He's being controlled. He's a conduit for it all. Why no one else has got it at the moment there. Even I can't take pictures like he does.
Right.
But I give him support. I'm there with him. And normally I try and project my energy into the atmosphere, see what happens. So yeah, it's one of those things that you get, and it does change you, and obviously it changes patients you cure. It allows you to comfort those you haven't cured. You tell them the reasons why you think they haven't been cured. I mean, quite often, sometimes I can't solve the problem, so I put them on to another one that I know and recommend, pass it on to him, and that helps. Or we may join in together, the two of us. Currently, you know, I'm having situations with a couple of patients like that, and it's really quite amazing. One of them's got very serious bowel trouble, and I rang Kevin, he's up in Cheshire, and told him the score, and he's got what he calls angels round. He often knows when I'm going to ring him. He rings me first, you know. You want some help, Ernie? And I'm still astounded by it, but it happens, because he's developed to that stage, see. But anyway, we did healing long distance, and me down here, on this lady, and the next time she saw a consultant, he had to examine her internally, and he just said to her, "Oh, that's good, it's healed." Now, he put it down partly, because he would, to some stuff she was rubbing in her skin from the outside, which I find that quite strange, really, but I don't know medicine. But she's quite cured at the moment. She's had a very long spell of no pain, no discomfort. Ah, you're getting something here, my dear. Yeah.
I'm kind of feeling waves of energy going along my arm there.
Yeah, you're taking something on board.
Very, very yeah.
You must let me know about you, what's going to happen to you. See, none of this is accidental. All this today, what's going on, it's all planned. It's a vast plan that you can't understand, really. We're only human. I always say it's like a jigsaw puzzle where you don't have the picture on the box.
Right.
All the little bits keep dropping in from various places.
Right.
You kind of have to let your mind expand to take it all in. Don't set up any barriers. Whatever comes to you, give it thought and tuck it away.
Do you think meditating helps with contacting the aliens? Do you think they're open to contact?
Okay.
Right, you mentioned George in the photographs, which takes us back where we started at the beginning of this film. And what we're showing you now is just some of a remarkable series of photographs that Ernie has to show us about very recent sightings around this area, around Southampton and Portsmouth. And he's got a lot of pictures to show us, so we'll ask him now to explain how he came by these pictures and very excitingly show us some of the others which he has. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay,
I can do that. Yeah.
Let's see them.
Well, look at these two first.
Right. Right.
And they're both taken towards Portsdown Hill. Towards Portsdown Hill, which is quite a popular hotspot for UFOs over many years. They're very strange looking craft, and ironically they're the only craft that I was able to say to George, right out of the blue, I was impelled to, George, can you take a picture over towards Portstein Hill, and when you've done that, take one over the dockyard, just over there, and I pointed the mate to him. So he looked at me, and I said, it's just a favour, just a once, you know. George likes to look after his own photographs, you know, where they are. So that's what he did, and that is what he got up, and there was some reason for, because I told him that because I didn't know this, there's something in your mind is there. That one in particular is quite unusual. You can't really describe, I mean, you can't really tell what any of them are in a way. They're unidentified.
I must just ask you, do tell us about George.
George?
Yes.
As a person, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He's a year older than me. He's 83. He's been a photographer for many years. Something to do with the Navy during the war. Certainly a seaman of some kind on ships and whatever.
Yes.
And he had a couple of sightings post-war, quite impressive actually, but he didn't really know what they were, so he just consigned them to something peculiar. He's a tall guy, very spare, white hair, doesn't bear fools gladly. So if you don't like his pictures and you start making suggestions, he will read you the riot act, I can tell you. So I let him do that, you know. But he's got good nature. I've known him for a year now, over a year, and we get on quite well together.
All right. Now, how is it that he's managed to get all these pictures from his camera?
Well, even George doesn't know that, I'm afraid. Even George doesn't know that.
How does he know where to photograph in the sky? And I mean, is he just sort of...
He doesn't know. He just chooses anywhere he likes. I always tell him he must be guided. He must have an instinct. But he just stands up, clicks them on them, pans them across the whole vista, one after the other, every 3 seconds, you know.
I see, yes.
Yeah.
And he gets these fantastic pictures?
Yeah. Sometimes you spend all day getting 90 exposures. You might find nothing on them.
Yeah.
Another day he'll maybe get 2 or 4 in the first few seconds. Then maybe not for a long time. And he can see them in the back of his camera, you see.
Yes.
In the viewing panel. He can see there's something on there.
Yes.
You mustn't forget, although you can see the pictures quite clearly here, they're very tiny little dots mostly.
Yes.
He doesn't really know what they are, but when he gets one, he shows me and zooms it up a little bit, so I'll get some idea.
All right.
But you never really get to know what they look like until he gets them home and really brings them up big, you know.
All right, okay, let's see another one. So some of these pictures are missing actually because the newspaper borrowed some.
Yeah, that's right. The lady who came to interview me took 12 away, you know. And now there's a very strange one there.
Is it this way? Can we see in the camera that one? Okay. See if we've got a good shot of that one. Okay, what's
Are you looking at the bottom one?
The bottom one, yeah?
Yeah. Two objects here, which really the only way we can look at them from the experience as the others. The front one is a humanoid, but for some reason or other, it's got something behind it going with it. It's not a craft of any kind. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And don't ask George ever if it's a blemish on his card or whatever, because you will get a very snappy answer.
Right, okay.
As he says, if it's on one exposure, it'll be on all the others.
Right.
But it never is.
These are all around Southampton and Portsmouth?
No, they're all Portsmouth.
All Portsmouth?
All of them, yeah. Every one of them.
All right. And has anybody had these pictures to study, you know? Have they been sent to anyone to...
No. They're absolutely invisible to everybody, even George, you see. Now, that one there is a bit of history over the dockyard, because that was in December last year.
Yes.
And George had been taking a picture of a Royal Marine contingent on the Gosport side of Portsmouth Harbour.
Yes.
Right up in the corner, I've got to show this, yes. Right up in the corner where we've marked it, there's the end of a cloud, a little way from it, a tiny little black object, just going out of sight on the picture, which if you think about it, that proves the point. What photographer could actually aim his camera at something like that in the corner and get a picture like that. And obviously the Marines, no one saw them there. But when they're blown up, there's the cloud up there. We've got big pictures of it elsewhere. That's the cloud up there, just coming down. And there's the little object in there, which is kidney-shaped.
Right, yeah.
So we deduced as what you know as a mothership, just expelling one of its craft to go out and have a look around and then come back.
Right.
This is quite well known in ufology.
Yeah.
But we'd never seen one in such circumstances as having a Royal Marine outfit there, oblivious apparently of these things up in the sky, which they would be.
Yes.
So what were the objects doing? Were they examining a piece of our history? The Royal Marines, the three masters in the harbour, the Victory, the Harrier and all those? Do they come down and have a look at our history? Because our history may not be going?
They must have think they would. Okay.
Right, we'll just try and find something else. This is one we get quite often by these buildings, what we call the skyscraper or whatever. We get a picture of one object in various parts of the building there, just off the building. We do have one, which I think the lady from the paper took, of the same skyscraper as we call it. I'm going to blow your mind slightly now. We counted 500 objects in the sky. White, black, double dots, whatever. 500. Now that's the sort of thing that was seen in Mexico in 2004, a huge formation.
Have we got a picture?
It was so impressive that George didn't want it shown to the papers. They wouldn't believe it, he said. I said, no, probably right.
Yeah.
So this book is usually full up, you see, where we... now we really don't know what that is, that one there. We really don't know. The jury's out on that one. I might think it's a bird at an awkward angle. We get lots of birds.
Yeah.
Mostly the birds, and we got probably 50 or 60 bird photographs. I put away in envelopes and just labelled it birds.
Yeah.
And I get out if I want to refresh my memory. But birds do look up very peculiar, funny angles. Where I live in Netley, we're right by the sea, and the seagulls are outside my window quite a lot. And I get used to the shapes they get into, you know. Now that's a formation there that we think are objects. Others think they're birds, but you can't see birds. These are all triangular objects.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily see a bird making that kind of a object.
Right.
You know, I've had a lot of experience with these birds. They make all sorts of formations. Quite a lot of them, I just say, there may be 40 all going around, and I say, oh, well, they're birds. We don't blow them up, you know.
Yeah.
But we blow those up. That's an interesting one, because we often have orbs, George calls them, in the vicinity of this same crane. Often. Sometimes there's one down there and one up there, sometimes there's one, whatever. Now this one, we haven't ever had one like this. Not only is the object there by the crane, just a little way over is a cloud-like object. Like a little kind of a... Yeah.
Is this one? This is another one. Here.
Well, it's probably the same crane you're looking at, but
same
different
crane,
things, you see.
different things around it there. It's quite interesting. Well, you know what? I can see one here on the table.
So really, yeah.
This looks very interesting. What's the story of this one here?
Well, that's the one that put all the newspapers and TVs to flight. Unfortunately, one of our members blew the humanoid, as we call him, up a bit larger than I would have liked. So I subsequently thinned it down a little bit, so it's quite small but still recognisable, and looked more what should you call it? Believable.
Right.
As you will see on the wall up there in various places, yeah.
If you go just above Ernie here, we can see.
Oh, is there? Yeah,
some pictures up there.
But interesting.
And George, yeah.
Because the chap in the newspaper article you showed earlier on, cosmologist, so-called, he just dismissed it, you know.
Is he a professional cosmologist?
Mundane or something or other.
Is he a professional cosmologist?
He described it as a kind of a shadow in the shape, somewhat in the shape of a human being, you know.
Is he a professional or an amateur?
Oh, sorry, I never caught that bit. No, he's at the Portsmouth University in that field, whatever. But his lady friend who I spoke to, she said it's just his interest. He does something else in the university, but that is a side interest, you know.
Okay. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, this goes back to 2001, 2002.
Oh, this one looks really amazing. Can you tell us something about this one?
Yeah, this is the one I like to call a green walnut, because it just describes what it is to me.
It does.
But it was taken quite recently, just a month or two ago. And originally, the picture of it was right down in the corner, right alongside the spinnaker, right close to the spinnaker. But we couldn't get it in there we wanted to blow it up bigger, you see. We couldn't do that with the spinnaker as well. So we had to cut the piece out. George did this, of course. He cut the piece out and moved up and blew up the whole picture. So we got a bigger version of it there.
Yes.
And this one right up close. The original one would have been down there somewhere, next to the spinnaker, you see.
Right.
So he has to fiddle around sometime to get the best picture. The trouble is, you see, they're so far away, in order to have a good look at them, you've got to blow them up about 40 times.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which really spoils it in a way.
Yeah.
Makes it blurred.
Strange,
But the green walnut, but honestly speaking, I don't know of anyone in UFO history that's ever seen one like that.
Unidentified
I do not. And the mine, you could almost say it was like a brain of some kind, but to me it's a green walnut.
Right. Now, I know we've got some really good, interesting articles around the walls here, so can we have a look at those and you can tell us something about
you can.
It's really fascinating.
You can. If you just want to. Right, this one here is quite rare in the 200 or so photographs that George has taken, in that it's over Gosport instead of Portsmouth. And the story behind this, which is quite normal for George, he happened to be over the Portsmouth side. There are the ferries there. He's going to get on one of the ferries in a minute. He had about 15 minutes to wait, and he's always got his camera with him, so he just thought he'd take a picture of Gosport, boom. When he looked at it afterwards, this is very tiny. The original is there, ringed around, actually. You can see where my finger is anyway. That's the original. You see how small they are. So what I did, in order to improve it for people to look at, I got him to blow that up so many times, blow that one up so many times. You can actually see the shape better now, which is really what we call a UFO shape. And I stuck them on there so people can look at that and say, well, that's what it eventually turned out to look like down there. And that was over Gosport. Quite rare, that one, and it come out really well. Right, and here's a bit of history going back to 2001 and 2002, actually, 2 years running. A group of us from the SUFOG UFO and Paranormal Group were up on the hill at the back of the village here, which is one of our Skywatch places. And we had video cameras and Lord knows what. And we saw this orange globe gradually appear over towards Hythe, over the water where we are, towards Hythe. An orange globe, it's there in that small picture. So in actual fact, this bit here was just to add effect to the whole area of UFOs. This is the actual contents there. We saw this orange globe and it was just hanging there in the sky, just hanging there, quite low down. So we thought we'll video it, and it stayed there and it stayed there and didn't move or anything. We thought, it's not one of the lights, not one of the chimneys. We sussed out all the alternatives. It was definitely an orange globe, and that answer was reinforced when suddenly what we know as the police spotter plane came out from the docks, came up towards this orange globe, went round it once, went away again, came back, went round it twice, and then went back into wherever it goes to, the police spotter plane. We were quite amazed at that, you know, to think that a police spotter plane was obviously filming it and examining it at a very close range. This thing then gradually disappeared. We don't know whether it went into another dimension, went out or whatever, just to behave just like a UFO does actually. But that was really something. So I got onto the Coast Guard the next day, and I got onto the police, and I got onto the RAF MOD USA base over there, because it flew over there. One and all said they had nothing to report. There was nothing up. Absolutely sure of that. I didn't argue too much because I was getting the usual runaround, and I'm quite used to that. Well, that was okay. We kept that. That was quite something to be looked at. A year to the day afterwards, in May it will be, a year to the, no, it's a 1 day difference. We were on the seashore down the bottom here, where the old pier is in Victoria Park. We weren't at our Skywatch hill on top. We were down there on a level with the sea, on the old remains of the old pier. And lo and behold, this orange globe appeared again in the same spot. Very low down, not moving, just there. We filmed it like mad. The police spotter plane came out again after a while, and it flew round it, really close, and it went round it again, and then it went back into its base wherever it goes. And this object stayed there for 20 minutes. The first time, the year before, it was there for 10 minutes. This one stayed there for 20 minutes. Then it began to move slightly up towards the docks here, very slightly, and then it went back again, and then that too disappeared after 20 minutes. And of course I got on the phone the next day, whatever, ringing round to everybody. I got a hold of a police air rescue unit at Leon Southampton, I believe, and they said, oh, you want so-and-so for those sort of things, probably a couple of guys messing around the helicopter over the water. I said, what, you mean messing over the RAF base and all that? Oh yeah, they do those sort of things. I said, well, I didn't know they were allowed to. Anyway, I didn't have any joy that night. They put me on to a radar unit at Southampton Airport, and this would have been about 11:15 when that happened, and they said, oh no, we don't have any control on the radar over here. The London people do that now, and they shut off at 11 o'clock, and I said, it's 11:15. This thing was there about 10:30 till 11:15. The runaround about this object. I persisted. Finally I got hold of the Chief Constable, Hampshire. We got used to each other over the years, by the way, so we're not too bad relationship. But I got hold of him. Letters passed to and fro over a few weeks. Finally he put me on to the police spotter unit, the chap in charge of that. And I got a letter to this day, kept in my files. The police spotter unit fellow said, yes, Mr. Sears, I agree. He said, our units were there at the time you state and for how long you state. We cannot tell you what they were doing there, quite probably an exercise. They said they did not see any object, and it was possibly what you saw was the planet Jupiter. So this is all in exchange of letters. And I wrote back and said, what wonderful technology your police spotter planes have got. It flew around Jupiter twice. They didn't reply to that. They also said about the second one the following year, and they said the same thing. Yes, our plane was there at the times you state, for the time you stated, on an exercise, you know. Okay. So I talked about it, and I wasn't going to have that, so I sent it all up, the video we got, up to the MOD. Sir Lewis Mooney, he was in charge of the MOD, top man, you know. And I kept it for 3 months, and I sort of wrote and said, have you finished with that? Could we have it back, you know, whatever. I came back and they said, standard letter, like I said. We do not explore objects like that until they may present a threat to our defences. And we do not have the expertise or the finance to do such a thing, and that was it, you know. But then the Horizon Television, BBC, got hold of it, see, and they made a lovely 20-minute video, the whole thing, just like a film it was. We were in it, and the objects were in it, and the plane was in it, and they emphasised the fact that the thing came back a year later, just when we thought it had gone away. That was the last day, almost exact day. I'm going all goose pimply. Ooh. Stop it. All over. I'm going all goose pimply. Somebody trying to put something in my mind, I think, about it. Anyway, try and forget that. Yeah, and so they got my picture in here again, you see, which is the one they got on that thing in their files. And I had a little talk about it, and they published a picture from somewhere else, the same picture as what is in that one here from somewhere else. But it all died away. All died away. This Lord Hill Norton too, Lord Hill Norton, the late Lord Hill Norton, he was the one that entered into a lot of really strong correspondence with the MOD on that one. I've got all these letters and the replies. He really went for 10 on them, you know.
All right. So he was a believer in
yeah.
UFOs?
Oh yeah. He's had lecturers up there in the House of Lords lecturing on UFOs. Yeah. Authors of books, you know.
Yes.
He was a nice old man.
So do you think there's a cover-up?
Well, yeah, he did. He told him he was.
News,
yeah. Yeah. He didn't pull any punches.
And you worked with
He just wanted to know what they were doing in our airspace. That was all.
Yeah.
Was, you know, surely there must be a threat.
All right.
Ex-admiral of the fleet, you know.
So you corresponded with him quite often.
Yeah.
About this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a little file on all the lot.
All right. Yes.
And that was the occasion after that, when we sent this video down to a guy in Wales who was an expert on videos, really an expert. He kept it for 3 months too. In fact, I had to remind him in the end. He said, yeah, it's been very difficult, that one. He said, we finally come up to the fact it is not a plane, it is not a balloon, and the light you see is not a light on the front of the object, the light comes from the whole object.
Ah.
Now that ties in with some of the UFO encounters I've had, abductions, you know. The light comes from everywhere inside, from the walls and the ceiling, whatever. The whole unit is made up of light molecules, I suppose. Don't know how they do it. It's technology. But that's what he said. He said, as far as I'm concerned, that is the answer. It's a genuine object. The light is not a light on the front or the back. It's the whole object. You know?
Right. That's interesting.
And that was something, you know, the police plane was inspecting at close range. I wonder what the correspondence was. In actual fact, this is not for you or anybody. It's just, let me tell you, that we have encountered the 2 pilots since then. I'm not going to say how or who did it. They said, yeah, we did see something. And that's all we can tell you, they said.
Oh, right.
Boom. Just like that.
Yeah. It's very telling, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe that's why I'm getting the shivers.
And that was in when, 2000?
2001 and 2002, yeah. May each year.
Yes, okay.
It's got to be probably the biggest scoop no one's ever had that. And there we got another one with George, you see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just haven't been able to use that one as much as we'd like because there's a cover-up on it all. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you feel like there's been some kind of deal made with maybe an extraterrestrial civilization?
Well,
this for that, and
yeah,
we'll keep rubbishing the story of UFOs.
Yeah.
We'll make this trade.
Yeah. It's quite likely, and there's a lot of theorists have come out with that. I've got articles where there's what they call the tall white aliens. They're down in Area 51 in America. They've been kept there for years, got their own little complex there. They've got the women and children there, and they just live there, and they're working on stuff. And the black what name gets the benefit in America, you know, to build things like, well, you know what you mean. But I don't know about that. That's beyond my remit, you see. If I haven't seen it, or I'll keep an open mind, but just say, it would explain a lot. And yeah, sometimes I don't know how they've kept us a secret for 50 years, but I've read some of the American UFO magazines. If they got a secret, they say they keep it forever. You will never learn. Too many lives, too many jobs are at stake, you know. Too many presidents can go to the wall. I always thought Regan was a great guy for that, because I always remember him saying everybody uses it in ufology. They were talking about, it was with the Russian chappie, talking about if an alien race landed, whatever, you know. And he said the aliens were already here, you know. He said it to the public, newspaper man, you know.
Do you think Ronald Reagan was, well, he wasn't trying to admit anything, but that was one of his pet phrases, and he wanted to make sure it was in the speech. I saw a documentary about it.
That was his nature, wasn't it, really? And I'll tell you the other interesting thing, is that on the same line, very quickly, I got a book there from the library the other week called You Can't Tell the People. It's not far away, it's under there from the library. And this is by Georgina Bruni. She covered the Rendlesham Forest affair, covered it and wrote the book, You Can't Tell the People. And people said, where did you get that title from? She said, I was a social gathering with a lot of people a few years back. Margaret Thatcher was there. She got in a conversation with Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher knew she was an author, so she told her what she was doing. My dear, she said, you write your book and get it published, but you can't tell the people. She chose it for a title. I mean, that's typical Thatcher, isn't it? What I would call typical Thatcher, anyway.
Gosh, that was just amazing, wasn't it? Thank you so much, Ernie.
Oh, my darling.
So much today, and my goodness, we have learned a lot, haven't we?
There's lots more out there, we just haven't got time to do.
I know, you've got hours and hours to tell us. I mean, don't forget, people, this is 46 years of ufology study. We're trying to do it in just a few hours, so there's masses more that Ernie can tell you, and lots more behind what he's been telling you that he knows. But anyway, it's been really interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And don't forget, everybody, they're out there.
Yeah, they're out there.
And they're watching.
And look what they're giving me. I'm 82.
Right.
I don't know what it is.
I wish I had some. Okay, cheers then. Thank you, Ernest.